Good afternoon, Atlanta Music Project young musicians and friends. I'm Averill, and I'm happy to welcome you to another edition of AMP Online Masterclasses, sponsored by the Chestnut Family Foundation. This class is the consistent approach, daily routines for horn playing, taught by Mr. Josh Williams. I invite you to participate by playing along at home and by answering questions in the chat. If you'd like, you can also have your video shown to demonstrate a concept as we go through the class. Also, if you don't already, please get your instrument out so that you can play along. So let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Pleasure to be back. As April said, my name is Josh Williams. I'm the French horn teaching artist at Atlanta Music Project and also a professional horn player. And so this is part 2 of the horn masterclass series. And this one is on daily routines. So daily routines are a little bit different than regular warm-ups, and we'll kind of talk about why and how. But I also wanted to briefly touch on last week's class, which was the harmonic series. I mentioned at the end of that class, for those of you who are in attendance, how those exercises can be tied into a daily routine. So that's what we'll talk about today. We'll touch on that a little bit too. So to define a daily routine, these are exercises that you do on a consistent basis to produce optimal results. One thing or one phrase that I always heard growing up is that you are what you repeatedly do. So there are a lot of different things we can compare that to. If you lift a lot of weights, you'll probably be much stronger than someone who doesn't. If you play basketball and you practice your free throws every day, you'll probably be a lot better at free throws, or at least more consistent at them. And as musicians, if you play your scales a lot, chances are you're going to be better at your scales than someone who doesn't practice their scales. That's not always the case, but it's one of those things where if you check that box, you're putting yourself in a much better position than those around you. So the reason I chose daily routines is that I've had students over the years, and even myself, I've heard this from my teachers. We ask, how do I get better? How do I play like you? How do I do blank X, Y, Z? And usually the general kind of funny answer is practice. They just say, go practice. And so I wanted to sort of elaborate on that a little bit. And so I think it's not just practicing. Mindless practice is not good, but focused practice is what we need to do. And I think consistent practice is what really makes us better. So most of the work gets done when you consistently do the right things. Now, my horn teacher, Mr. Skip Sneed, he's an accomplished horn player. He's played all over the world for over 40 years, a really long time. And he always told us that in order to be great at the horn, you have to be able to do 8 things. You have to be able to play high, low, soft, loud, short, long, slow, and fast. And so when you break it down to that, and we stop thinking about notes and all of the tubing in the horn and mouthpieces and equipment, it really kind of makes horn playing a lot less scary or intimidating. It makes it feel like it's something that we can all do and be really good at. So we need to think about developing a daily routine that encompasses all of those elements.
Mr. Josh, could you repeat those elements one more time?
Yeah, so the 8 things, you have to be able to play high and low, so cover all the ranges, soft and loud, covering all of your dynamics, short and long to cover all of your articulations, and then slow and fast to cover all the different tempos that you're going to play. And so when developing your daily routine, try to think about covering all 8 of those elements, because if you're doing a daily routine, which implies that you're doing it every single day, you're going to get better at those slowly over time. And I can't stress that enough. Daily routines produce optimal results over time. So you can't do a routine for a week and expect to get great results. If you do a few years, you'll have the best results. I actually was watching a master class online the other day, and I forgot who the person was, but they said every practice session is $1 in your practice piggy bank. And if you accumulate more practice dollars, then you'll be a lot better off on stage. And that's completely true. And so it goes with daily routines. Now, me personally, I do my daily routine every single day, 0 days off. I've been on vacation. I've done my daily routine. I've had a gig, performance, whatever. If I have a performance at 8 in the morning, I'll do my daily routine at 6 in the morning. It just helps me get ready to play. I have a couple different versions, one that's an hour long, one that's 30 minutes, and one that's 10 minutes. And I'll do some form of my daily routine every single day, even if I don't plan to actually practice that day. At least I'm covering my fundamentals. And before we start, this is not sort of an end-all be-all of exercises. I'm just giving you a few exercises, and maybe you can pick and choose some and figure out what you personally need. Some of us may need more of one particular exercise than another. And I think practicing these exercises today will kind of help us gauge what we'll need to do to create a good daily routine for ourselves. So starting out first, if you have your horn in your hand, like I do, you can go ahead and place it on the floor on this side. Always place your horn down like that. And we'll start with breathing. Breathing is generally the most important thing. Last week we talked about horn playing and comparing it to a car. The analogy I kind of got from Bill Vermeulen, principal horn of the Houston Symphony. Breathing, that's the air, it's your gas in your car. If you don't have gas, you won't be able to go anywhere in your car. So breathing, something that Mr. Vermeulen says a lot, is that we're born doing it. So we don't have to practice breathing, but we still have to be consistent at it. So make sure that your posture is upright. Make sure that you're off of the back of the chair. And we'll just practice breathing. I like to set a good tempo for myself. I'll go in for 4 beats, meaning I'll inhale for 4 whole beats and out for 4 beats. And make sure after beat 4 that you have all of your air out. So you're really getting all that air moving. Again, we're just getting the air moving. We're not even playing yet. So I'll start at a tempo and you all can go along with me. 1, 2, ready, and. Starting out, that's a nice, easy pace. So again, 1, 2, breathe in and. Okay, good. And so after that, we kind of mix it up. Now we'll do in for 4 and out for 2. 1, 2, ready, and. So you see when you're going out for 2 after breathing in for 4, you have to really push the air across those 2 beats. When we're breathing, both inhaling and exhaling, always start from your core. So these abdominal muscles here. Don't breathe from up here. Definitely don't breathe out of your nose. Breathe from down here. That's going to give you a lot better quality. So again, in for 4, out for 2. 1, 2, ready, and. Good. Now let's do in for 2, out for 2. And we'll go a little bit faster. So let's pretend we're playing a faster piece. 1, 2, ready, and. Okay, and now to mix it up, we'll do in for 2, out for 1. So we have to get all of our air out in 1 beat. Slower tempo. 1, 2, ready, and. Okay, and last, my favorite is in for 1, out for 1. And if you haven't picked up on it yet, I like to sort of just loop this, do it over and over. So we'll do in for 1, out for 1. 1, 2, ready, and. So if you're feeling kind of lightheaded, that's good. That means you're really moving the air the way you need to. So I usually do it until I feel sort of lightheaded. I'll make sure you don't pass out, but this is a good way to just get your air moving. And so you may ask, why do we do this? Again, the horn doesn't work without air. And also we're practicing things that go along with phrasing and making great musical phrases. when we work at it with different tempos, we're covering the slow and fast elements of horn playing, because we have to be able to move our air when we're playing fast music and when we're playing slow. And so you can sort of notice if something's going wrong just by breathing. If you find that you have trouble inhaling for 4 whole beats or holding your note for 4 whole beats, you should probably practice breathing before you add the extra difficulty with the horn. Okay, so are there any questions so far on the daily routine? This is section number 1. Okay, so we'll move along. Next, you can pick your horn up briefly, and we'll just take the mouthpiece for now. Again, place the horn back down on this side. The next thing I like to work on is buzzing. Buzzing is a really important element. Again, with the car analogy that we looked at last week, buzzing, or your embouchure, that's sort of the starter or the engine of your car. You can't make a note if the lips aren't vibrating. So it's really good to test your buzz either with the mouthpiece or a free buzz, but we'll do it with the mouthpiece. And this is something you should do at the beginning. Now, with buzzing, there have been a lot of debates among professional horn players of whether or not it's helpful when practicing music. So I personally don't use the mouthpiece when I'm practicing music, but I use it in my daily routine just to get my lips vibrating and to kind of see where I'm at. Okay, so another thing to talk about before buzzing, if you get to this part of your daily routine and you find that you can't really get the notes to start, sometimes if we're playing early in the morning especially, we're going to experience some puffiness or swelling in our lips, just especially when you first wake up. So one thing that really works for me, just a quick tip, is if you one thing that I like to do is get a warm towel, get warm water, not hot water, and squeeze the water out of it and just press it up against your face. That kind of reduces some swelling there. And another thing I like to do is just kind of buzz my lips. Now, not like I'm actually playing, but just. And this is one thing that helps me sort of just get the lips moving. So let's do that for just a little bit. We'll just do 4 beats. So 1, 2, ready, and again, 2, 3, 4. Last time, 2, ready. Okay, good. So you can think of this as warming up the car. If it's below freezing outside and your car's sitting and it's freezing, you don't want to take off and just start driving it. It's not good for your car. It's not good for your lips to just start playing the horn, which is why I can't stress enough warming up. So really take the time to do these exercises. Okay, so now let's move on to our first exercise. We're going to continue just buzzing, so don't get the horns out yet. We're going to look at long tones. This is something that I've had students talk to me about all the time. They say, how do I get a better tone? How do I sound better when I play the horn? And I always say long tones. And a student will say, I practiced those long tones last week and I don't sound any better. Again, over time, you'll see the results. So why start with long tones? I think that's a good question for the students here. So does anyone have an answer for that? Why do we start with long tones, or why should we?
Hey, Aiden, let's go with you. What do you think? Why do you think long tones are a good way to start out?
Um, it warms you up, like your lips, and you can go from your low notes to your high notes. They make sure you're playing correctly.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you're playing long notes, you can assess a lot of things. You can determine the quality of your buzz. If your lips give out in the middle of a note, let's say this, then maybe they're not vibrating quite yet. You can do more of the, or you can work on your breathing a little bit more. But that's one thing to look at. Another thing is you can get a judgment of your tone quality, which sort of is the same thing as your buzz. If you start out and your buzz sounds like this, that's not very good, right? You want a good. And you can notice other things, like let's say if you get something extra in your buzz, and it's not a good thing, these aren't bonus points here, something like that. It's a good way to kind of assess those when you're just playing long tones. So looking here at the long tones exercise, this sort of descends chromatically, and then it goes back up, and then at the end we do an arpeggio. So with this, I only showed you the first exercise that I do typically in a day, but if I need extra time, I'll just do this in a different key. So I'll transpose everything down a step. But here we're starting on C, and there aren't any articulations written because I didn't want to limit myself or limit anyone who does these exercises. So when I'm buzzing, I like to slide in between the notes, which is something you don't want to do when you play. But to give you an example, if I were to play the first 4 measures, it'll sound like this. 1, 2, ready. So I kind of slide because, again, right now we're just getting ready for the day. We're warming up. We're doing our daily routine. So another thing just to think about, you can allow the bad sounds to happen in your daily routine. Again, right now we're just getting started. So don't dwell too much on the mistakes. Just make sure that you're getting the consistent work in. Now, if something's really wrong, go back and look at it, but it's just a time to get warmed up. Okay, so looking at this exercise, I'll go through it and we can all just go through it together and I'll sort of lead it. So I usually play these at a very, very slow tempo first thing in the day, but we have a lot of exercises here. So we'll go at a pretty fast tempo. Here's our tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Always make sure you have a consistent tempo. 3, 4. There. Here we go. Long tones. 2. Ready. So let's stop there. We're stopping on the low F. Now, some of you may find you can't play these notes, and that's okay. If you want to do these long tones in your daily routine, just start a little bit higher. Maybe start on G. Okay, so moving ahead, we'll start back at the next measure after the low F, where we start to move up chromatically. Ready? And. So I have a fermata there. That's where I usually stop. And the next part is really optional for me. I have this arpeggio in here. You'll find that depending on your schedule and what you've been doing, you don't need as much warm-up time as you do on other days. So this is what I meant by my hour-long routine, 30-minute and 10-minute. So this is what I'll do. If I played a recital the night before, my face generally feels pretty good the next day, or if I had a heavy concert, I don't need as much warm-up time. But let's go through the arpeggios here at the end. It's just a C arpeggio, except we're going up to the G at the end. So at a faster tempo, 1, 2, ready. Okay. So again, if those are your first notes of the day, you don't have to do the second half with the arpeggios, but it's pretty helpful to get sort of a gauge for where you are in your warm-up. If you can go up to that high G first thing in the day, then you probably don't need as much warm-up as you normally would do. Okay, so now that we're done buzzing, the long tones, I like to do just a regular buzzing exercise. And this is something that you may have looked at in Essential Elements book if you ever worked with that, or just as a beginner. Just plain old buzzing across the range. So you can pick any note, and we'll have one of the students maybe demonstrate for us. And I like to just start on a lower note, go up and go down. Okay, so let's have someone demonstrate that. Again, we're just getting our lips to vibrate, so don't be embarrassed or feel like you're not doing it correctly.
Hey, Aiden, would you like to give it a shot since you are our student for the day?
Sure.
Thank you.
Again, just on the mouthpiece.
Oh, okay.
Excellent. So one thing for anyone out in the audience is you can hear as Aiden got higher, his sound stayed full, which is what you want to work for. Now, if I were to do that, and I'll give you a bad example since he gave us a great one. Here's a bad example. That means the lips really aren't moving, or not the lips, the embouchure is not vibrating the way that we want it to just yet. So you could spend a little bit more time on the long tones if you aren't really feeling warmed up yet. Okay, so now let's look at the long tones, and we'll do them on the horn now. So again, one thing that you may have noticed all day, I've been counting myself in and playing at a consistent tempo. Now, every time I do my daily routine, I have a metronome going, but I didn't want to have that going during this because I'd have to turn it off and on. But setting good tempo, you can tap your foot, or you can just tap your toe. You can tap your leg, or one thing that a lot of horn players do is as they hold their horn up, they'll kind of tap the bell. But either way, so I'll just do the first 4 measures of the long tones. 1, 2, ready? All right, Aiden, would you like to do that for us?
Yeah, sure. What am I doing again?
The long tones here on the screen. So just do the first 4 measures. So C, B, B flat, A.
Okay.
Okay, and yeah, for that A, we'll do 1 and 2. Okay, good. So now, Aiden, I want you to skip ahead. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. To measure 9, where you start back on the C and you go up. And I want you to do just 4 measures. So I want you to play this much. 1, 2, ready?
We're losing Mr. Josh, on some of your pitches are getting blocked out. I don't know if the settings are if your audio settings are set.
Okay, is that all of them or just the lower pitches?
Just some of the lower pitches.
Okay. In that case, we'll go up in the range. Okay, so Aiden, do you see measure 16? Starts on a G. So we'll go from G up to the C. So it'll sound like this. Ready? All right, nice job. So that's how I like to start off my routine. So that's something you can take with you, or anytime really in your practice session. It's good to do this at the beginning and at the end to just sort of get everything reset. Okay, so one last thing on the long tones is you can start the note a couple of different ways. You can start the note with the tongue, what we normally do, or we can do what are called air attacks. This is what you do on a day where maybe you had a lot of heavy playing the day before, or you overdid it. You sort of get everything fixed, and you start the note just with the air, like this. You hear how the front is not defined, or rather than. So that's just something to do towards the beginning of your warm-up to kind of help you along. Okay, so moving on, the next exercise here is called daily drill number 1. And this is essentially something called the Remington exercise. And so for this one, I think if we just play it together, I'll sort of lead it. This, more or less, if you don't know your chromatic scale or your fingerings, I don't really like to write them in, but it's something you could do when you're learning it. But you'll see that the interval just gets bigger, but we always go back to C. So if you miss a note, that's okay. You can always sort of have your focal point be that middle C that we start on. So this will go at a pretty fast tempo. I just want to show you this exercise. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, ready. Okay, and then after the arpeggio, we have, after the Remington exercise, we just have an arpeggio. All right. So this is just a good way to get your flexibility moving. You can slur them, tongue them. You can play them at any dynamic. You can play them, you can shorten the note values. You can play it like this. Just sort of work on your flexibility, or you can play them a lot slower than that. Again, it's good to mix it up in your daily routine. So let's move on to daily drill number 2. And this is the same thing, except we are ascending. So again, your focal point on daily drill number 2 will be your middle C. So again, we'll do it at a pretty quick tempo, and I'll lead it off. 1, 2, ready. Or sorry, let me get the exercise up there. All right, there we go. So this, we're just going up. If you don't know the fingering for a note, just skip it and just get back on the middle C and play the notes that you do know for now.
Hey, Mr. Josh,
Yeah.
let me throw this out there to Kendall and to Aiden. So you all put it on mute and play along with him on mute, and then we'll listen to you guys after afterwards. So make sure that you all are practicing and getting some good practice runs in. Okay.
Yeah, and with that in mind, let's go all the way up to G. So from C to G, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 14 measures. So we'll go up to the G, second line G, and no more. So let's do it together. 1, 2, ready? We'll stop there. So let's see if we have a volunteer. You don't have to do it that fast. You can do it at whatever tempo you'd like. You could do it in quarter notes, half notes, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Let's see. Kendall, would you like to volunteer? Perfect. Thank you.
Good. Very nice. Very nice. And so that was another thing. I'm sure you may not have done this before, but one thing that I like is that you kept going, you kept your tempo consistent, and you hit every single C. So that's one thing I want to emphasize with this exercise. You always have that C as sort of your pitch reference. As we all know, playing the horn, it's pretty hard to nail the notes especially as you get higher and there's more of those harmonics there. So good. So that's daily routine number 2. To give you a practical example of that, the reason why it's good to play large intervals like that, last week I played an example from Mahler's First Symphony, but there are a lot of examples in the rep where you have really wide ranges. So I'll just play a couple of those. Here's one. So you see you have a lot of wide intervals there. If you just practice that part, having not done this in your daily routine, it might be a lot harder than if you sort of address that first thing in the day. Okay, so next we'll move on to scales. That's the next part of the daily routine. Scales, I like to play this in a pretty conventional pattern. You've probably seen this pattern before. Now this isn't the only scale I play, but I wanted to give you an example of the pattern here. And so here, this is just an F scale. I have it in a pretty low range. You have the scale followed by the arpeggio. So we'll just play this together. But there are a lot of other examples here that I want to get to. So we'll go through this one pretty quickly. Okay, so here's the pattern. And the tempo will be 1, 2, and 1, 2. Ready? So for the scales portion, again, we won't focus too heavily on this, but I want to stress the importance of playing your scales every single day. We could spend the whole 45 minutes on scales, but playing scales is really important. One, all state. You have to play scales to get into all state. That's a pretty great incentive for learning them. But it also helps you play in different keys. If you know all of your major and minor scales, you won't be scared when you see 7 flats or 7 sharps in your key signature. And to give you an example of why it's important to play your scales and arpeggios, there are several sections in the literature that include those. One coming from Strauss, his first horn concerto. There's one part that's really quick with arpeggios. It sounds like this. So that's a really quick arpeggio. And then another from Glier's concerto, the third movement. So it's a really quick scale. If I didn't know my F scale, I'd have to practice that section for 20 minutes. But I know my scale, and I saw that it was a scale in the music, so I learned it instantly. So that's another thing. And you'll see slower examples of it too. So it's good to sort of work with different articulations on your scales, not just short notes, but long notes. Another example from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. So it's really connected and really smooth. And it's also a really difficult scale, F sharp. We don't play that in that key very much. So good to know all of your scales. So again, can't stress those enough. One thing that you could do for now, if you're a beginner to intermediate player, is just work on one scale per week in your daily routine. That way you can master all 12 major scales and then start adding them on. I play through all major and minor scales in my daily routine, but I started by doing one scale a week. All right, so moving along, we have the next exercise, which is called spikes. Spikes are a lot of fun. This is my favorite exercise here. For those of you wearing earbuds or headphones, I'd suggest perhaps turning your volume down a little bit because this is going to be a pretty intense exercise here. So spikes, my college professor, or my college horn teacher, showed me this exercise. I think he learned it from Phil Myers, who is a longtime player in the New York Philharmonic. And this exercise is just a good way to center your tone quickly, because I find that a lot of beginners have trouble playing quick notes. If I tell them to play a whole note, they have a great sound. If I tell them to play a really short note, we don't really know how to do it. So one thing to do, make sure that you don't cut the note off with your tongue. Something I was always told is just stop blowing air into the horn and you'll get a nice rounded cutoff. So I decided to just focus on the arpeggio here. So again, this is a hard exercise to learn, but it helps you center your tone quickly. And if you can center your tone quickly on an eighth note, then you'll play beautiful whole notes, quarter notes, everything else. So this, we play each note 4 times, and it's all just part of the C scale or the C arpeggio, although it has the key signature of G, but we won't worry about that. So starting out with C, this exercise, again, it's a short, loud, centered note. And so again, it's going to be pretty loud. So here we go. It sounds like this. 1, 2, ready? 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. And so if I'm not centering, you could tell each note was rounded, each note was centered. That's because I have everything working the right way. If I don't, here's a bad example of that. You'll kind of get some of that. So quickly, does someone want to demonstrate the spike starting on C, third space C at the beginning of that exercise? Just 4 good ones. How about Aiden?
Okay. You want me to go higher than that?
No, let's just start on the C. So here's your note. Okay, good. So we have some good building blocks here. So there were a couple of good ones. Some where the lips didn't vibrate quite immediately. So this is one to just keep working on. You just have to keep doing this very consistently every day. This exercise, again, it's my favorite part because you get to play really loud. I challenge everyone when you do this exercise, be as obnoxious as possible, but also be as precise as possible. So if we go down to the G, so starting measure 5, ready, and you hear how it's really loud, but it's also in tune, on time, and it has a great sound. So let's try a couple of them on G. So we'll move down. Again, here's your note. Okay, you ready, Aiden?
Okay.
Okay, let's see if we can tighten it up a little bit. Just bop. Again. A little bit louder. Good. One last one. Good. Those are really sounding good towards the end. So spikes, this is another exercise that I like to do. You can do it on any note. I think practicing on any note, it's the best way to do it. If there's a note.
Shot? Kendall, do you want to give it a shot? Great.
All right, let's hear it. Shorter.
Try it one more time. I had you on mute.
Good. Yeah, those are really good. Now make sure on a couple of them it sounded like you were kind of cutting the note off with your tongue like this. So just make sure you don't do that. But let's hear 4 more of those. Those are really good. Excellent. So spikes, again, this is just about centering your sound quickly. This helps you when you have a solo and you have sort of a high note, or it's a scary solo because it's really soft and you're the only one playing in the orchestra. These are good exercises to work on so you can feel confident starting notes. It's one that I've done many times. I practiced these for over an hour before. All right, so moving on, we will look at the harmonic series.
Lip trills, Mr. Josh?
Yeah, let's look at lip trills. So this is one last thing. They're called lip trills, but actually I like to think of them as air trills or tongue trills, because really the movement happens with your tongue when you change notes. So we sometimes have trills in our music as horn players. Whenever we have a trill that is a whole step, so between 2 notes that are a whole step apart, we'll do what we call lip trills. And they're really hard to do. So I recommend this exercise a lot to students who have trouble playing lip trills because it sort of breaks it down. So again, we're using the harmonic series here because you're going to use the same fingering for the trills. You're not going to switch fingerings like you would on a clarinet or something like that. So that's what makes it hard. You have to push up to the higher note. So as an example here, you have G to A. I like to use 1 and 2. So first valve and second valve. And it sounds like this. You can speed it up. That's a lip trill, and you see them a lot in music, like in Mozart. So you'll see them all over the place as a horn player. So it's a really good skill to have. One thing I cannot stress enough, you have to practice these every day. You cannot play a trill with a valve. It doesn't sound great on the horn. You can't change fingerings, and what I mean is this. It just sounds sloppy, so you have to. So does anyone want to practice this? You don't have to play it as fast as I did, but you can start slow and then speed it up as fast as you can for now. So again, it's valves 1 and 2 between G and A. I know we don't usually play G with 1 and 2, but we will now.
Kendall, you've got your horn up, so let's hear you.
Okay, let's see if you can go a little bit faster.
And do it without moving the valves.
Yeah, so just valves 1 and 2.
You know, I think this would be a good topic for another webinar. Would be moving on in the direction of being able to accomplish the lip trills. And so, Mr. Josh, if you could summarize the things that that Kendall and Aiden and anyone else out there that plays French horn should really take from this daily warm-up routine or daily routine masterclass, I think that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So really the whole point of this, again, you don't have to do these exercises. You can make up your own exercises as long as you're working on the fundamental elements of playing the horn. So again, high, low, soft, loud, short, long, slow, and fast. So make sure you're touching all of these things every single day. You could do them with scales, you could do them with arpeggios, articulations, lip trills, all of that. And another way to work on that is to have good etude books. These are something that I work a lot out of. Number one I recommend is, mine is very old, but it's the Koprosh 60 Selected Studies. Koprosh Kling 40 Characteristic Etudes. This is more advanced, but Koprosh, I'd say anyone could work on. And also the H.L. Clark Technical Studies for the Cornet. I know it says cornet, but horn players, we use this book as well. So develop a good, consistent routine, and you can start practicing applying those fundamentals to etudes, and that will really make your horn playing a lot better. So in closing, we are what we consistently do. So if you want to be a great horn player, you have to consistently play the horn and warm up consistently every single day. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the class, and I hope some of these exercises help you. I look forward to maybe hearing some of the progress later on.
Hey, Mr. Josh, thank you. Thank you for your time and for an outstanding masterclass. Thank you to Kendall and Aiden for tuning in, and thank you all for being so consistent too. And thank you all, everyone else who's tuned in out there as well. And Amir, good to see you, man. And hopefully we'll be seeing you at the master classes going on at 5 o'clock for trombone. And thank you for tuning in. And we will see you all on our next session. All right.
Goodbye, everyone.